Finding your own watercolor style is one of the most exciting but sometimes tricky parts of being an artist. You might be learning tons of new techniques but still struggling to find your distinct artistic voice and that thing that makes your artwork feel like you. So in this video, I will share a simple but very powerful exercise that will help you develop a unique look in your paintings faster and easier than you might think. It's the same exercise that took me from a watercolor beginner constantly experimenting and being unsure of my direction to a professional artist with a recognizable watercolor style. It even led me to collaborations with major brands and my artwork being featured on Canadian silver and gold coins. And the best part, I still use this exercise today because it's that effective for growth and creativity. If you haven't tried this yet, you will be amazed at how much this will help you in terms of finding your voice or refining your style if you're a more seasoned artist, and how much fun self-discovery can really be. And here's how the exercise works. You need to pick one simple subject, something that you love drawing or painting. It can be an animal, a face, or an object, anything that feels really natural to you. So I will be using a magnolia flower. And our goal is to paint the subject multiple times, but each time we will switch up your watercolor materials to discover what feels the most natural and exciting to you. Now, here's the important part of this process that we're about to go through for watercolors specifically. Paper makes a huge difference in what aspects of your style will come through and really shine. Your painting surface may not be as important, say, if you paint with acrylics or oils, but trust me, different paper textures will bring out different qualities in your work. For example, cold-pressed paper will give you rich textures and very easy blends, so perfect for loose washes, and if you're into more expressive style, this is the one you will likely gravitate towards. Hot-pressed paper is super smooth, making it ideal for crisp, detailed work that you can scan easily. This is perfect for commercial illustration, and if you enjoy highly detailed line work, this will likely fit your style better. Colored paper, yes, let's not forget this one, will probably appeal to you more if you love experimentation, multimedia mixed with your watercolors, and of course, any sort of decorative style. For this exercise, you can work on a loose collection of papers, or you can try the sketchbook I recently launched in collaboration with Etcher. It features 100% cotton, cold and hot pressed paper, plus a few sheets of black paper for your most creative explorations. I will leave a link to it in the video description below. Let's start with a traditional watercolor approach on this magnolia flower. I've linked the reference photo in the video description below, so you can try this exercise for yourself. And in this first session, we'll be painting on cold pressed paper, just paint and water, no mixed media. Cold pressed paper has a textured surface and it's highly absorbent, making it perfect for expressive washes and soft, natural blends. If you love fluidity in your watercolor work, this is where your personal style will really start to shine. So as you move from petal to petal, pay attention to what you enjoy most about how the paper handles your strokes. And also notice what you don't like. This is an important part of discovering your artistic preferences. And one of the things that I always notice is that slight tooth of cold pressed paper that holds onto pigment beautifully, allowing for soft edges and natural granulation. This is why it's a favorite among watercolor artists who enjoy a painterly, organic look. The texture adds character to every single brush stroke you make, making even simple washes look really rich and dynamic. For this demonstration, I'm using quinacridone red, some warmer quinacridone coral for the petals, a little bit of burnt scarlet for those dry spots, perylene violet for the branch, and super granulating green for the leaf. Watch what happens as I wet a petal with clear water or very diluted red pigment and then drop in more saturated color. The pigments spread slowly and naturally, creating soft transitions that give you a sense of depth and movement. You want to lean into the fact that this paper takes longer to dry. It's a wonderful characteristic that allows for more manipulation. If you like to adjust your colors after putting down your strokes, take note of how much you can push the pigment around. Try lifting color with a dry brush, adding faint lines and highlights, or shaping your color while the surface is still damp. This is how it can help you find your style, and this is certainly my favorite paper for all my personal watercolor work. One of the best ways to discover your watercolor style is to pay attention to what feels most natural and enjoyable to you. Which effects you're able to create are really catching your eye, and which parts of this process you want to continue spending time on. Cold pressed paper is quite forgiving. It lets you layer multiple washes without buckling, making it great for those artists who love to work slowly, building up thin layers of color. So if this suits your personality, that's another reason to explore more of the cold pressed surface. However, if you prefer crisp details and more precise outlines, you may find that cold pressed paper feels a bit too textured for your style. And that's totally okay. This is all a part of the learning and discovery process. In a moment, we'll test the same magnolia flower on hot pressed paper so you can compare the differences and see what suits you best. For now, let's fully enjoy this textured surface. Imagine the types of watercolor scenes you might want to explore on this cold pressed paper. If you love impressionistic florals, moody landscapes, expressive portraits, or atmospheric paintings with lots of granulation and texture, this will likely be your go-to paper. It will naturally enhance loose, organic styles, helping you develop a look that feels effortless and unique to you. And of course, loose backgrounds are so much fun on cold pressed paper. There's so many different ways to frame your subject, and I like to do my backgrounds in several layers. So here I started with phthalo blue and aqua green, very lightly around the flower. And then when everything was dry, I followed with my favorite, Dioxazine purple, and added some splashes of violet. Just don't forget to tape the edges of your paper. This way your colors will be less likely to bleed, especially if you're painting on loose sheets of paper or in a sketchbook like this. Now let's try hot pressed watercolor paper and see how it influences our painting approach. As you work, once again, pay close attention to what you like and don't like about the surface. The experience of painting on hot pressed paper is very different from cold pressed, and the results will be different as well. It has an ultra smooth texture, allowing your brush strokes to glide effortlessly. However, you also notice that it dries much faster, which has a big impact on the final look. For this exercise, I'm using quinacridone magenta. Any of your favorite reds will work, with touches of purple and coral to build up shadows and warm highlights on the petals. Watch what happens when I wet a petal and drop color at the base. Unlike cold pressed paper where the pigment flows and spreads slowly, hot pressed paper keeps the color in place more or less, creating sharper, well-defined edges. Because it dries so quickly, blending may require a different approach. So instead of relying on natural diffusion, you may need to soften the edges manually with a damp brush. So why would you use hot pressed paper, and what distinct style does it work for? It's important to mention that this paper is ideal if you love mixed media because it's so smooth and the surface works beautifully with fine liners, colored pencils, and markers. To demonstrate, I'm adding black ink lines with a fine liner from Sakura. This technique is often called a line and wash, where watercolor washes are combined with crisp ink details. Notice how effortlessly my pen glides over the page, creating very clean, uninterrupted strokes. If you love controlled, deliberate painting, this surface might be the perfect fit for your style. And of course, you can layer additional details. This time, I will take advantage of the smooth surface once again and create very crisp shadows and extremely intricate thin veins on the petals. This is something that would be much harder to achieve on textured cold-pressed paper, which is why many botanical artists prefer this hot-pressed surface. If you enjoy structured, detailed, focused work, whether it's botanical illustration, technical drawing, or precise decorative elements, hot-pressed paper will feel natural to you, making your style really shine. This is actually one of my preferred surfaces when I design compositions for the Royal Canadian Mint on these gold and silver coins, where I combine watercolor with fine ink lines for a highly detailed look. And now I'm refining the lines, adjusting the thickness for a more dynamic look in my strokes. The ability to build up delicate, precise details makes hot pressed paper an excellent choice for commercial illustration, especially if you're looking to break into things like book covers, editorial illustration, and surface design. Because this paper has no texture, it ensures sharp edges and flawless line work, print reproduction, and digital scanning, making it easy to digitize artwork for professional use. If your goal is to create polished, print-ready designs, hot press paper is your best friend. So now that we've tried both cold pressed and hot pressed paper, which one do you think feels more natural to you? Let's keep going and explore even more ways to refine your watercolor style. And while traditional watercolor is amazing on its own, don't limit yourself if you're still searching for your distinct artistic voice. Some of the most unique and recognizable styles out there come from mixing mediums. In fact, many of the book cover designs I get commissioned for incorporate watercolor mixed with gouache, metallic paints, and ink. And this is where things get really interesting. So instead of sketching with graphite, I'm using white pencil to outline my design, the same flower, on the black pages of my sketchbook. You can use black or tinted paper, and of course I encourage you to experiment with colored surface as well. This white pencil makes the lines much easier to see on dark paper, and the best part, once I start painting, the outlines will softly blend into the background and almost dissolve with water. Next, I'm going in with Jelly Roll marker to create crisp white outlines, just like I would with black ink on white paper, but in reverse. This instantly gives the piece a more graphic, illustrative feel. And the great thing about these markers is that they resist water, so even when I paint over them, the lines stay clean and sharp. This exercise forces you to flip your approach to value, meaning lights and darks. So instead of preserving the white of the paper and adding color, we're now bringing back the highlights using white pigment. It's an incredible way to train your eye to see differently and think outside the box. To add highlights, I'm layering opaque white gouache. You can use regular watercolor, but I find that gouache works a little bit better. And gouache is technically just opaque watercolor. I'm putting it over areas like the petals, gently softening with water to blend it into the composition. Gouache in particular is an opaque type of watercolor that can be applied to any paper, including colored and black paper. It's incredibly flexible and more forgiving than transparent watercolors, allowing for multiple layers and highly vibrant, almost decorative results. Now let's talk about adding gold and metallic accents. One of my favorite ways to elevate a painting and make it more commercially appealing. Many luxury book covers, wedding invitations, and high-end packaging use gold embossing or metallic elements to add richness and visual interest. And you can easily replicate this effect in watercolor using metallic paints or even gold leaf accents. So I've added details with interference red from Core. It's a paint that shifts color depending on an angle of light. These types of paints add depth, movement, and a touch of magic to your work, also making them perfect for decorative and festive postcards. And to wrap it up, I added a few strokes of white gouache just to accentuate the edges, and maybe a backdrop using some shimmering blue and some whimsical clouds using my gel marker once again. So once you explored a variety of materials and papers, take a step back, flip through completed sketches, and compare your different styles side by side. Which versions feel the most exciting to you? What techniques came most naturally? If you're looking to develop a more commercial style, what do you think would look best on stationery or maybe wall art? If you want to break into book illustration, which style would work best for you? These are the clues that will lead you to your unique style over time. The best part is that you can repeat this exercise as often as you like with different subjects, and you'll keep discovering new aspects of your artistic voice. So if you're feeling stuck or unsure about your watercolor style today, try this exercise. I'd love to see what you create. Tag me on Instagram and share your results in the comments below. And if you want more in-depth tutorials on traditional watercolor techniques, especially botanical art, check out my playlist of flower tutorials here on YouTube. Thank you for watching and painting with me. I will see you soon.